Good morning. Good morning. It is 2:42 a.m. I'm on my way to the gym right now. We have it's Monday. We have a tropical storm coming into Phoenix, Arizona, which is a little bit odd. I was, we were delivered some bad news about my uncle being inside of the hospital. Um, Yesterday morning, I got a call around 7 o'clock. And by the time I made it up to the hospital, they were stabilizing him. They had to resuscitate him a couple times, and then they had to air vac him over to another hospital that specifically dealt with what he was going through, which was a matter of the heart. And this is an individual, and I always tell him this because I don't know that he understands how 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 important it was, but I didn't have anywhere to live for when I was, I want to say I was about 14 or 15. Um, just certain circumstances, how I was living, just it didn't give me nowhere to live, and it seemed like I was almost being hunted to the point where everywhere I tried to lay my head, it just wasn't working. And he was the only place that nobody really knew of. I mean, besides family, but nobody probably would have suspected me going there. But he gave me his home to live in. And I'd always tell him, I'd always, express my gratitude and my thankfulness for that. And so I get the call yesterday that he's in the hospital, etc. Obviously that's devastating. And get to the hospital, check on how he's doing. My family is all there. And I pretty much said hello to everybody and said I have to go to church. I wasn't a doctor. I had already prayed, and I didn't feel like there was anything else or any more that I could do that was going to benefit this situation other than going to church. And while I'm sitting there, the pastor, who was a guest speaker, he says the enemy only attacks what God is about to release. It says the greater the attack, the bigger the praise. I don't think there's anything bigger than having somebody in the hospital and when they say that they had to resuscitate them and bring them back to life and use defibrillators to get their heart started 10 times. I don't think there's too much greater than that in forms of an attack outside of death. And I said, wow, what's the chances on a Sunday? And I'm on my way to church. No, because I was getting up. Matter of fact, I had just finished praying. And it was odd because when I got done praying, my eyes were wet. My eyes were just wet. So when I finished praying is when I got the call within, 10 or 15 minutes. But what bigger attack is there to come against somebody than somebody you love in an emergency ICU unit? And at those points, Those attacks are intended to throw you off. Those attacks are intended to distract you. At those points, they're intended to make you feel as if there's something you can do. It's intended for you to put your emotions above and beyond God. And I wasn't going to go for it. I knew where I was headed that morning. And I had just seen him. He had just been at my house 2 or 3 days prior. At least 2 or 3, if that, 2 or 3 days prior. He had just been at my house. But I had refused to let that become a distraction in my life. I had done all I could do. Standing around the hospital wasn't going to make things better. I was going to get the news no matter what it was. But we sent the prayer up. I believed in what it said. And his heart started to get a 5% increase. 10% increase. I say all that to simply say is, when you're under attack and things don't go the way that you planned, I'd have you consider that is the time to double down on your efforts and your energy. I went to church, and then I end up getting a call later on about an offer on a property that I have for sale being sold. Then this particular piece of equipment that I wanted became available. And I had one of the best services that I had had in a while. And I was able to get in the presence of other believers and pray with them. What I'm saying is that because I was obedient, not to the pain that I was feeling, but I was obedient to do what I was on course to do anyways, that everything inside of that day turned in my favor. Now, it's real easy to hang out at the hospital and say, well, me being here will do what? Well, in case he wakes up. Then good, he wakes up, he needs time to refresh himself, put himself together, put his face together, whatever the case may be. But when I come back, will be a better time than being there when he's still trying to recover. It's when you're obedient to what you're supposed to do that life starts to line up. There was a quote in this Leonard Wilder book, and it's called The Infinite Self, and he talks about a specific type of person, and what they call them is fringe dwellers. And fringe dwellers are typically people who knew from the jump that they were different, that they weren't the same, they did not fit in, they were not part of the normal. And I'm not trying to give myself some ultimate title or some level of prestige with some thing that makes me look secular or independent. but I can relate to a fringe dweller. So when you stay at the hospital, I go to church. When you're sleeping in the bed, I'm driving down the street in pouring rain on my way to a gym. When you're hanging out at Friday night, going to the bar, I prefer to spend it with inmates talking about God. Doesn't make me better than you. Doesn't make you better than me. Just means we have different agendas. But when you're obedient, and you say, well, what is obedient? Obedient to what? Obedient to what you know you should be doing. Another level of reality opens up. And it's no longer attached to a numerical value. It's no longer attached to how you feel. It's attached to what you believe. It's associated with what you hear. It's real easy to be positive when everything is going good. But let things go a little bit wrong and outside of your control. Are you still maintaining that level of positivity? My role model, or my mentor, not my role model, my mentor, I spoke with him briefly yesterday and kind of informed him about what was going on with my uncle. And he started talking to me about some things that had been going on with him. And he sent me this article from, I believe it was the Harvard School of Medicine. And it was talking about, he just emailed it to me. It was probably about a 6-page article. And the article was referencing resilience and how one can become resilient, how one can bounce back from adversity and trials and tribulations. And it said one key way that most people who are resilient bounce back is they're positive. That positive outlook allows for them to have a perspective that brings everything back into reality. It talked about how reality was really a perception. Meaning whatever you want it to be is what it will be. And whatever you don't want it to be, it won't be. It's a perception. You have the option today to change your perception and to be obedient. I'll leave it at this. I was comfortable with leaving that hospital because had God decided that it was his last day on the face of this earth, he would not have woke him up that morning. He would not have allowed him to get in his car. And he would not have allowed him to drive himself to the hospital, where at the very moment simultaneously he collapsed in the hospital and his heart needed to be restarted. Just understand that life is literally that short. You got options.